of MediaEqualizer.com. We've got Mr. Brian Maloney back with us. Brian, good morning to you, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So on Friday, I was prepping for our interview, Brian, and we were going to talk a little bit about, Dianne Feinstein and Brett Kavanaugh and, this letter that she's been sitting on since June and everything else. And I know we're still going to talk about that, but we've had some new developments because the accuser is now accusing the nominee for the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh, of sexual misconduct. What do you make of this?
Well, I do think that you hit the correct point first there, and that is, what was Dianne Feinstein doing sitting on this thing? So now we've got this situation where, we can't proceed with this until this has been investigated. Well, Feinstein has had this for months. And so now, conveniently, she drops this at the 11th hour when it can do the most political damage. And look, what Democrats are trying to do here is stall the vote until after the November election. That way they can win control of the U.S. Senate, win control of Congress, and then scuttle this whole thing. And then Trump will never get anyone he wants confirmed. So that's what all this is about, is trickery. So, am I going to be able to sit here and say that this didn't happen 35 years ago in high school or whatever? No. But, I mean, if you're able to look at this and not feel like it's become a theater of the absurd, I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's absolutely ridiculous what's going on.
Yeah, you are exactly right. I also think that there's probably some fundraising to some of this. I know a couple of weeks ago up at MediaEqualizer.com, back when Cory Booker was having his grandstanding Spartacus moment, they were sending out emails, fundraising, trying to, they want to run for president, some of these people.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question that all this has been an opportunity for, seeing which Democrat looks strongest going into 2020. So there's that. But I just think that Feinstein, I mean, she has no excuse, for sitting on something for 3 months and then dropping it when it's politically timed to this extent. So, but, I mean, the bottom line is that Kavanaugh has now had his reputation smeared. I don't know why anybody would ever want to be on the Supreme Court, run for president, run for office, do anything anymore, because it's all about trickery, and it's all about sliming people at the worst possible moment. And, I mean, think about it, we're actually now seriously talking about what Kavanaugh may or may not have done in high school. I mean, high school. So, I mean, if you can look at this and not shake your head in disbelief, I think we're in a very, very sad state of affairs.
No, there's no doubt that we are. So this is a delay tactic. I agree with you. That does sound right. They're trying to delay this because they know if they can torpedo his nomination, it's going to be a while before Donald Trump gets another one. It will be after the election, but before there's another nomination. What are your thoughts on this, Brian Maloney, in terms of, the vote, I believe, is scheduled for Thursday. You have one Republican, Jeff Flake, saying we don't need to vote, we need to delay it. What do you think? Or do you think they'll go ahead and stand firm? The White House, as of last night, was standing firm by Kavanaugh's denials, and they were going to move forward. What's Chuck Grassley going to do? What are you hearing?
Well, I think, notice how it is one of the most liberal Republicans in the U.S. Senate, Jeff Flake, one who's also on his way out the door, who was the first to jump out and say we need to delay this, almost in tandem with the Democrats. I mean, it's like this whole thing was choreographed by the left ahead of time. Now that, look, should they look into this? I guess so. I don't want to sit here and attack this woman except to say that, she does have a history of left-wing activism, of far-left activism that was immediately apparent. There are also some rumors going around I don't want to get into too much yet until we have some more information. But, there's a lot going around, so we need to look into motives. But the bottom line here is that anyone looking to be confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court in the future is...
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
What's it like, being a politician at the Marble Palace? You know, what's it like down there? What's it like being around all those people who are going to jail? Phone number this morning, 870-275-9799. Hey, it just crossed my mind, you know? It just, it crossed my mind today. I got up and I thought, with all of the criticism that Conduit News has gotten over the years and here recently because, we're reporting and, we're just doing what the Uniparty doesn't want, and that's wake more people up to what's really going on. And then at the same time telling them and educating them that they have a choice. They're able to, vote these people out or vote for, a different type of government that they actually can still control. Matter of fact, you got an easier path if you wake enough people up. It should be easier to implement conservative policies here locally than it is at Washington, D.C. And my goodness, with everything that's going on in Washington, D.C. right now, that certainly supports my argument. For sure. Hey, welcome to the program this morning. Welcome to the program. This is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine. And, again, that phone number, 870-275-9799. We're broadcasting across radio. We're broadcasting on radio stations across the state of Arkansas, and we're really glad that you're with us. Also over at Facebook.com/Conduit News, as well as the YouTube channel, Conduit News. Please subscribe and click the little bell to receive notifications. We do have a good show for you, and excited to talk about all the issues of today. Kind of building on what I just talked about, coming up at 7:05, we will be addressing this piece over at Conduit for Action. Can the legislature police itself? Can the legislature police itself? It's an excellent question. I think many of you know the answer to it. But the politicians who have not been pinched, if you will, in the public corruption scandals, not that all of them are, corrupt. I mean, some of them are good, but the ones who've been there the whole time and now want to somehow act like they have credibility when they didn't say anything, and now they want to try to lead us to a better, more ethical, more honest legislature. I just think the answer is clear. No, you can't police yourself. You know what I'm saying? And then at some point you got to think to yourself, I don't even know how some of these guys who are still a part of the Uniparty who've been following this, kind of cabal of, especially in a lot of the Republican leadership circles. All of your friends are going to jail. You guys might be okay, but a lot of your friends, a lot of the people that you were backing are going to jail. What's that got to feel like? And when is the mainstream media going to wake up and realize, you guys knew the whole time, didn't you? Maybe the mainstream media already knows it, but they just decide to ignore it. We'll talk more about that at 7. Also, coming up at 7:33, I want to introduce you to Mr. Rocky Romanella. Rocky Romanella is a business leadership expert. He's the former president of UPS, by the way. And we'll be talking to him about, I'm sure we'll be talking to him about his business, 360 Management Services, but really want to get his take on what Bernie Sanders, the communist Bernie Sanders, what he said. And listen, I'm not some giant fan of Jeff Bezos and Amazon. But recently, because he owns the Washington Post and everything else, although I do like Amazon. I like the service they provide, right? I certainly don't like Jeff Bezos' politics, though. But recently, Bernie Sanders came out and said, if you don't pay your employees a living wage, then you, and he put forth a bill, it's not going to go anywhere, but he put forth a bill saying, then you need to pay extra. You need to pay an extra tax to contribute extra to these welfare programs that your low-wage workers rely on. Wow, those are some crazy ideas from these socialists, right? These socialist communists, they have the craziest ideas if you really think about it. Well, so how does this tie into Arkansas? I'll tell you a little bit about that, but we've got a minimum wage crisis or minimum wage battle on our hands. I call it a crisis because I think it's going to pass. They want to raise the minimum wage in Arkansas to $11 an hour in the next couple of years. And the people of Arkansas are going to get to vote on it, and I think most of them are going to vote on it. I think they're going to vote on it are going to vote for it. I think they're going to vote for it because people who are not making minimum wage, but maybe a little bit above, I think a lot of them assume that they'll get a raise as well. That's not necessarily the case, by the way. And, of course, we've talked a lot about how the minimum wage is a terrible idea all the way around, and it actually hurts the very people it claims to help. Anyway, we'll be talking with him at 7:33. Excited about that. Also have a carefully crafted language segment coming up next hour. So just stay tuned for all of that. All right, let's start at the top here. This is the news. I don't care. Well, I'll tell you about the Brett Kavanaugh stuff here in a minute, but that's not the news of the day. The top headline that I think is most relevant today nationally is that President Donald Trump has ordered the immediate release of all text messages, Carter Page FISA application from the Russia investigation. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Get your big boy pants on. Here we go. This is supposedly the information that it's going to reveal, according to what some people speculate, it's going to reveal this whole thing is just a farce. Let's actually read Donald Trump's statement, shall we? And let me tell you something. I've read several publications. This is a Zero Hedge article. I've read several publications, and a lot of them don't just give you the White House statement, okay? The White House statement, if you read it, is very specific, and you got to know some of these people are sweating right now. At the request of a number of committees of Congress and for reasons of transparency, the President has directed the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and the Department of Justice, including the FBI, to provide for immediate declassification of the following materials. 1. Pages 10 through 12 and 17 through 34 of the June 2017 application to the FISA court in the matter of Carter W. Page. 2. All FBI reports of interviews with Bruce G. Orr prepared in connection with the Russia investigation. And 3. All FBI reports of interviews prepared in connection with all Carter Page FISA applications. Now, here's the kicker. You ready for this? It's the second paragraph. In addition, President Donald J. Trump has directed the Department of Justice, including the FBI, to publicly release all text messages relating to the Russia investigation without redaction of James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and Bruce Orr. So we're going to get to see some other text messages. And specifically, Donald Trump is saying, do not redact James Comey's name, do not redact Andrew McCabe's, do not redact Peter Strzok's, Lisa Page, or Bruce Orr's. You do not redact those names. I think this is going to be a lot bigger deal than the mainstream media even realizes. We'll wait and see. Maybe it's nothing. I will say this: you had Devin Nunes. He was quoted as saying, let me find what he said about this. I think on Sunday, Chairman Devin Nunes, go to the Fox News article, Joe. He says, let's see here. Hang on a second. I had it highlighted. If it's still there, I don't know if it is or not on your end, because this is a dense article. Here it is. If the president wants the American people to really understand how broad and invasive this investigation has been to many Americans and how unfair it has been, he has no choice but to declassify. Now, last week I got the privilege of sitting down with Devin Nunes, and you can find the interview. It's still up right now at conduitnews.com. Joe, I've queued this up. Go ahead and play this portion of my interview with the chairman of the Select House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes.
The concerning part is that they would take dirt from a political campaign, get a warrant in a secret court on an American citizen, using that dirt from political operatives that ended up being totally false, not proven. That should have never been done. But they also gave it to the press, and the press ran news stories on it, and then they used the news stories to corroborate the dossier as if it was two different things. And that was totally wrong. And then we think the American people deserve to see the rest of what they used and the tools and techniques that were used to target the Trump campaign and Trump campaign associates. And that's what we're asking the president to declassify.
Yeah, and so talk a little bit about that. Is the declassification that's been reported, is that going to happen this week, you think?
Well, we hear that they're working on it. We hear that they're trying to get the approval process done. I mean, the president has the power just to do it. We're hopeful. We wanted it done last week. There's rumors that it may be this week. We'll see, because we do have the hurricane that's coming to the East Coast. So,
do you think or believe the American people will ever see the full FISA documents and applications for themselves? Will those ever be declassified?
I do. I believe that they will.
Wow,
I do. Ultimately, I believe they will, and I think people will be surprised at what's there.
Stop.
You recently made a trip.
The interview last week with Devin Nunes. What's interesting here is last week the news was the Trump administration was going to declassify the Bruce Orr documents, not necessarily the FISA. And, of course, now, I mean, it appears, it looks like. Now, we're not getting the whole thing. If you read the statement, obviously there's specific pages that the president is citing here that he wants. You do have to protect sources and methods to some extent. I talked to Congressman Rick Crawford on Friday. Congressman Crawford, who serves on the Permanent Select House Committee on Intelligence, and he said that you do have to, protect sources and methods when appropriate. That might be revealed in some of the documents, but that, yeah, I mean, there's stuff in there that the American people need to see. So, again, that's pages 10 through 12, 17 through 34. And you're not allowed to redact the names James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and Bruce Orr. This may make the FBI look really, really bad. Not the rank and file, not the ones who've, probably have had their stomachs turned because they're so sick that their agency heads have conducted themselves in such a biased way, has allowed politics to cloud their law enforcement role, is what it looks like. And then the next question is, why would they do that unless there's, who knows, they've got to have some motive, and it's probably a lot to lose. The deep state is a real thing. I know there's some people out there that still maybe, listen, these lifers, these bureaucrats, these people are there, and they are thwarting the Trump administration every chance they get. It's not just in these bureaucracies, but it appears to have been in these Obama holdovers in law enforcement at the Justice Department and the FBI. The telephone number is 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. I mean, okay, let's just keep going here real quick. Next story, Breitbart.com. The deep state exposed. Okay, so this is separate from the Department of Justice, separate from the FBI. Let's talk about the Department of State, okay? We have a pattern with the Department of Justice and the FBI, according to new information, of them purposely leaking stories to the media and then using the stories as justification for why they need to continue their investigations or get more warrants. Well, what's the State Department do? Pretty much the same thing, but they're just using the media as a way to put pressure on people they don't like serving in government who are loyal to the president and serve at the pleasure of the president. There used to be a time where, people in the executive branch, whoever the president was, that was their job. Christina Wong at Breitbart News writes, it was May, about 6 weeks after appointee Marie Stoll began her new job as senior advisor at the State Department's Bureau of International Organization Affairs. As senior advisor at the Bureau, Stoll was in charge of making sure President Trump's agenda was represented at the many international organizations the United States participates in and mostly funds, such as the United Nations and its various agencies. Stoll and her boss, Ambassador Kevin Moley, had just left for a trip to Geneva for the World Health Assembly. Back at the State Department, Aaron Barclay, a senior career diplomat at the I.O. Bureau, invited more than 10 civil servants within the Bureau to a lunch meeting. So basically, the boss is away, and you have this meeting called back home. At the meeting, Molly Fee, another senior career diplomat, went around the table and asked each civil servant for complaints about Stoll and took notes. Another senior career diplomat in the I.O. Bureau, Narissa Cook, was also there. One civil servant who participated in the meeting would later say the meeting felt uncomfortable and that there was pressure to say something, meaning pressure to complain about their boss. Several weeks later, the first hit piece against Stoll ran in an exclusive foreign policy report, foreign policy meaning that's an actual news brand, foreign policy report. The June 13th piece alleged that Stoll was vetting U.S. employees at the State Department and at the United Nations to determine whether they were loyal to President Trump. The piece also alleged Stoll had a highly secretive management style, had emerged as the most dominant force in the Bureau, and had required that she review new directives from the office before they went out, and that she was stripping references to international law and international order from action items and memos. Not one source was named in the piece, which cited the allegations from nearly a dozen anonymous current and former U.S. officials. The piece did, however, mention 3 deputy assistant secretaries of state in the Bureau, Fee, Barclay, and Cook, who were said to be leaving to other positions at State Department. After the article published, 3 top Democrats, right on cue, Senator Bob Menendez, Representative Elliot Engel, and Elijah Cummings, then sent a letter dated June 19th to the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, citing the article and demanding documents related to Stoll and her alleged vetting of employees' loyalty. Do you see how this works, folks? You see what they're doing? And, of course, we find out later what's really going on. The deep state is real. It's real, and I think it operates at different levels of severity in terms of, just what are their goals. But I'm telling you, they believe that their goal is to thwart change. I mean, and if this was an action figure inside a box Republican or an action figure inside a box Democrat, you wouldn't have this stuff going on. But because Donald Trump represents something that Washington has never seen in the modern era, I mean, the closest you can get is Reagan, but even the Heritage Foundation admitted that Trump had a more successful first year than Reagan did. They're trying to stop the swamp from draining. It is obvious. It is obvious. Whether you're reading the liberal press outlets or the conservative press outlets, there is a resistance, if you will, from agencies that are supposed to answer to the executive branch according to our Constitution. It should be alarming to any American, whether you're liberal or conservative. Back in a minute.
To any person out there who writes a letter and says this person did something awful in high school and then the whole thing is over, I mean, no one will ever be confirmed to anything again. That's really where we're at now.
Yeah, unless that letter is making an accusation against a liberal progressive that believes in an abortion, and then of course
then it would be dropped like a hot potato, like Keith Ellison, who is deputy chair of the DNC. Where there are credible abuse allegations, including a 911 call, and that was swept under the rug by the Democrats. So, I mean, they have a very selective sense of outrage about this, no question.
Yeah, and you have to ask this, and I can I can appreciate being delicate here, right? When it comes to this, this well, I guess she's now 50. This woman's allegations here about what happened 35 years ago in high school, allegedly. But you got to wonder. I mean,
money, power, prestige, essence, ace. Available now from aristocrats serving Arkansas. From the Nata Rhino collection. The fragrance of backroom deals. Nepotism. The aroma of higher taxes. Subliminal. Deception. Deep state. Ace. Made right here in Arkansas by a taxpayer-funded Chinese factory. Every bottle carefully crafted for you. Gender neutral. Nothing says aristocrat like Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa.
Available now in the Marble Palace gift shop.
Paul Harrell parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, so those of you on Facebook, some of you have already finished the sentence of the whiteboard, or I guess the sentence that the whiteboard begins. It just says "power corrupts." It's going to be up on the whiteboard the rest of the week. That's the truth. That's what we're dealing with right now. Of course, the end of that phrase is absolute power corrupts absolutely. So power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That is the theme this week. It applies really to all levels of government, but when I wrote it, definitely I was thinking about our own local government here in the state of Arkansas. I think that's what we're dealing with here. And I think some of these people, well, let me just say it this way. They thought they had absolute power, but when those, when the jail cell door slams shut, maybe they'll see things differently. Again, the phone number, 870-275-9799. I said I'd tell you about Kavanaugh. He wants to address his accuser. Of course, the accuser saying that he attempted to rape her 35 years ago when they were in high school at a party. The Thursday vote in the Senate Judiciary Committee has been put on hold. There now is a Monday morning sometime, there's a hearing where the accuser will be on Capitol Hill and be testifying. And I imagine Brett Kavanaugh will also be there as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. In the meantime, though, President Donald Trump has ordered the declassification of the FISA documents and the text messages of James Comey and the gang. I can't wait. Can you? We'll be back in just a moment. Judge Kavanaugh has been a judge in a high court for a long time, and I know he's going to the highest court here in this situation, but why not come? I mean, if it was that big of a deal and it affected you that much, why wait till now? Unless, I mean, I guess I'm saying, if there's anybody out there that says, I can't believe you're not believing her, well, hang on now, because the fact that she's just now coming out, you can't help but think that this is really just because of political differences.
Well, yes, don't forget that Judge Kavanaugh has been subjected to 6 FBI background investigations through the course of his career. 6. None of those FBI investigations ever turned up any of this over the course of all those years. No, none of them. You know, at some point they would have talked to people that Judge Kavanaugh knew in high school. There's no question. At some point. So where did this come from? I mean, we're right to question the timing and the validity. It's not. We're not saying this woman is making it up, but we're saying that, look, I mean, the circumstances are fishy.
Well, I think this is going to be a mess because she's now saying she is willing to testify publicly. And if that happens, I mean, you know, can you just imagine what the fake news media is going to do with this? I mean, they're going to run it live. They're going to replay it constantly. And what this is you can just see, this is an allergic reaction from the swamp, doing everything they can to make sure Donald Trump does not get another Supreme Court justice, does not get to pick another Supreme Court justice before the midterms.
And it's right out of the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill playbook. I mean, except that now we're talking about high school. You know, I mean, really. I mean, next time it will be middle school. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really where we're going with this. It's just going to keep getting dumber every time.
I guess towards the end of last week, when it was revealed that Dianne Feinstein, again, Senator Dianne Feinstein, who I want to remind everybody may in fact be a Chinese agent. I mean, she definitely had, you know, she's ignorant. I didn't know I employed somebody for decades, you know, that was my driver that was working for the Chinese government until the FBI told me. I swear I didn't know. But so Dianne Feinstein, she sits on this letter since June. And then the report that I read, Brian, said that the FBI, she referred it to the FBI. That was the headline, but the FBI says, we're not investigating this. Now that the accuser has come forward, I wonder if that might change.
Well, now, you know, when you have this Jeff Flake kind of situation where you have a couple of Republicans, I mean, it does seem like it changes the dynamic. But you're absolutely right about Dianne Feinstein, one of the least trustworthy people.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, this portion of the program brought to you by Conduit for Commerce. Conduit for Commerce, folks, you can check them out. It's conduitforcommerce.org, and they are standing up for small business. They're putting Arkansas small business first. They not only have that, they also have a great scorecard of legislators from the last legislative session. You can check that out. But yeah, that's their motto: Arkansas small business first. And you can check out their policy positions, their scorecards, current events, all kinds of stuff. And also, if you want, you could support them if you're looking for a cause to support. And that's what this segment's about. You know, the government getting involved in your health care. I think we could all, I mean, for people who've been watching this whole debacle, I mean, Obamacare clearly is like the cherry on top of this really, really bad experiment. You know, it's just more people between you and your doctor. You've heard that said before, you know, well, the insurance company's between you and your doctor. Well, then the insurance companies, you know, arm in arm, you know, kumbaya, they're singing with the government because they're the ones that cut the deal. All in the name, by the way, of taking better care of you and making things more affordable. Do they make it more expensive, more cumbersome, and harder for you to get the basic treatment that you need? Obviously, it's been terrible for business. I was talking to people at the Greene County Republican Party last week. We were talking about this minimum wage thing. It's on the ballot. It's a terrible idea. And somebody stood up, rightly so, and said, hey, what you don't understand is this. that if they make that minimum wage $11 an hour, they're already testing burger joints, McDonald's, fast food, where there's an automated machine that makes your burger fresh to order right there. And people will invest in that. And you're actually absolutely right. These companies will invest in it because it's a knowable cost, and eventually it's going to be cheaper in the long run. This is exactly what happened with Obamacare, by the way. Back when Obamacare was in its infancy of implementation, and of course it was created in a way to be a disaster so that they can come back in and fix it with Medicare for all. I see those bumper stickers sometimes. I just shake my head. Medicare for all. What they don't say is VA care for all, because that's essentially what we would get. I mean, when the government is entirely in charge of providing your health care, we see how they treat our veterans, and it's an embarrassment. Back when Obamacare was in its infancy, one of the things that they said was these business owners were freaking out because they didn't know what the cost of health care was going to be. There was no way they knew they were going to have to pay more money. They knew if they had a certain amount of employees, they were going to have to cover employees that they weren't covering now. But then you had the premium situation where it was just unpredictable and they just continued to rise. So do you know what a lot of industrial type companies did that make things? Well, they went with what was a knowable cost. It might have been outrageously expensive, but they started automating a lot of stuff. If it was possible, if the technology existed to automate their systems, they would do it. And Obamacare was a big part of that. And that may be what happens when we start talking about this minimum wage. It's not more jobs. It's less jobs for people. Anyway, all that being said, I thought I would take the time to highlight a story about Arkansas and our healthcare situation and something called the Arkansas Healthcare Marketplace. That's right. The Arkansas Health Insurance Exchange. Did you know that we had one of those? First off, I need to remind you of something. The Arkansas Health Insurance Exchange, just like Medicaid expansion under Obamacare, was optional. That's right. We didn't have to do it. How are things going? Well, things are going great. They just gave the head of the Arkansas Health Insurance Marketplace a raise. So now she makes $150,000 a year. Yeah. So obviously the program's a smashing success then. I mean, if you're raising the salary of the head of the marketplace, then you would think then the program is doing really well. Mm-hmm. You would also think... I know this is crazy, but you would also think that the existence of the program still makes sense. It's still logical to keep it. So the Marketplace Board also ended a contract for insurance navigators. I mean, there's a lot here in this article. Now, the first thing is, the Arkansas Health Insurance Marketplace director the board decided to end a contract that had paid a nonprofit group to provide 4 outreach workers known as navigators to help people sign up for insurance. They ended that. Instead, they're going to be giving more money to another group, the Arkansas Foundation for Medical Care, which is just a call center. Now, what do they even do? Well, they don't actually enroll anybody in the healthcare exchange plans. They just advise them. Currently, operators at the call center answer questions from consumers, but don't enroll them in plans. Okay? So they're just there as consultants, if you will. Man, the consultant business is just lucrative, I'll tell you. So the call center is now going to be referring people to insurance agents. And I guess that's when the enrollment will take place. So back in 2013, again, we didn't have to do this, but we decided to do this. We created the Marketplace, the Healthcare Exchange, Arkansas Healthcare Exchange. The old director resigned in 2017. Her name was Cheryl Smith Gardner. She was interesting. I once had some audio, I've got it somewhere, of her testifying before the Oversight Committee about how they were basically doing polls and surveys and testing out propaganda on what they were going to call the health insurance exchange, because for some reason they discovered that the people of Arkansas are not really keen on the idea that this program would be administered by the federal government because they didn't like federal overreach and Obamacare. So they were very adamant that even though the exchange's bureaucratic rules are set by the federal government ultimately, that we need to make sure the name conveys to people that it's Arkansas's exchange and not the federal government's. It was amazing to hear a bureaucrat essentially, essentially admit that the product itself isn't going to sell itself. We've got to basically market it to the people, and that is called propaganda when the government does this. Yeah, I have a long memory. I remember this stuff because I was covering it. So the new director. What's her name? Announcing the pay raise, outgoing chairman Greg Hatch to the board. I missed her name somewhere? Is it up, increasing? Let me see. Also decided, I don't see her name. The new director, I'm missing it here. Angela Lothar. There we go. Okay. So Angela Lothar became the marketplaces director just under a year ago after serving as the interim director. Okay, there it is. So we scroll down here, and here's where we get to, I think, what is the biggest outrage. Okay? You eventually learn that they voted on a premium tax, or a fee, if you will. You see, each one of these plans that's sold on the exchange, there's a fee charge that the state gets to collect on it. Now, of course, the insurance companies are passing that on to consumers, but the state of Arkansas is getting rich because of it. With one member dissenting, the board also approved a committee's recommendation to keep the fee it charges to insurance companies at the same level in 2020 after it increases next year. Now, the fee right now, listen up, folks, the fee on the Arkansas health insurance marketplace that they're charging each insurance policy, the fee is currently equal to 3% of the premiums for non-Medicaid plans that the company sells. That will increase next year to 4.25%. In part, this piece says, to cover an increase in the fee that the federal government charges to pay expenses associated with healthcare.gov. Okay, in part. Well, where's the rest of it go? To my knowledge, this article doesn't say. It doesn't actually report that the state of Arkansas is skimming extra for itself. Because you see, next year, the federal government's fee on these plans will increase from 1.5% to 3%. So right now, the state of Arkansas is basically doubling the fee so that they can make some money off of this. You see why they wanted a healthcare marketplace exchange? Now, that's incredible to me. I mean, right. So right now they're charging more. I mean, because right. I mean, if the federal government's current fee is 1.5% on all plans sold, and we're already charging 3%, the state of Arkansas is, to cover the 1.5% and then have 1.5% for ourselves. And then next year, the federal government increases their fee to 3%, so we go ahead and increase ours 4.25%. But listen to this little line. Companies in the 34 states that don't have their own exchange under Obamacare, they go ahead and pay a 3.5% fee. It's just already there. So you're telling me at this point, it is cheaper for the state of Arkansas in terms of for consumers. If we didn't have an exchange, we'd be stuck with the 3.5% fee that they would pass along to consumers. But in Arkansas, baby, we do it differently, right? We got to feed that government. We got to feed the marble palace. So in Arkansas, we not only just, do the 3.5% fee, right? No. We make it 4.25% so that the state of Arkansas can skim a little off the top. I mean, how do you justify that? How do you justify that? When it was optional. The argument is obviously, it's an easy argument to make. We're paying more on the health care exchanges because the state of Arkansas got involved as a middleman and, folks, that's like mob mentality, by the way. Well, if you're going to do business here, you're going to have to give me a cut. We'll be by once a week. We're going to need 10%. That's exactly what the mob does. They get involved so that they can skim some off the top. It's incredible. And they do this with the Medicaid, too. Now, so let's be clear. This is the healthcare exchange that was optional, right? This is for non-Medicaid plans that are sold. Well, the Medicaid plans, if you go to the Medicaid expansion version of this, they do the same thing because the state of Arkansas, not the exchange, but the state of Arkansas has a premium tax. And so the state of Arkansas has a perverse incentive to not really see the rolls of Medicaid expansion reduced, because on each one of those plans, they end up getting money back. The federal government is paying 90% and we're paying 10%. But then the state of Arkansas is throwing a tax on the insurance companies here, and they're getting a cut of the pie off of every insurance policy that's sold. So every month when the state of Arkansas and the federal government pays, $500 a month per person, whether you go to the doctor or not, on Medicaid expansion, they're also getting a tax on that. Now, kind of tying a little bow around this, kind of back to what we were talking about with the minimum wage. Same thing happens. You know why the federal government wants the minimum wage to go up? You know why the state of Arkansas wants the minimum wage to go up? You want to really know the answer? It's because now they get to tax you at $11 an hour instead of $8.50. So that means more money going into the government coffers. More tax revenue for them to spend and waste and steal for themselves. In Arkansas, our guys steal it for themselves. They'll find a way. It's like Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park. Don't worry. Life will find a way. That's why the politicians think down there. It's like, don't worry. Supreme Court ruling against our GIF program? Don't worry. We'll find a way. That's the way they think down there. Yeah. It's pretty sick. Medicaid expansion under Obamacare? We all, Republicans, we campaigned against Obamacare in this, but now we need to implement it so that we can enrich ourselves secretly and that nobody will find out in 5 years. We got about a 5-year grace period here. How are we going to do that? How are we going to go back on our word? How are we going to do it? And the Johns of the world down there, John Woods, John Burris, John Cooper, don't worry. We'll find a way. Life will find a way. Telephone number is 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you would like to contribute to the program, you can call or text. And Facebook.com/Conduit News. Also, over at YouTube, please subscribe and click the little bell to receive notifications. We're going to take a break. This is Conduit News Radio. My name is Paul. Thank you for listening. Back in just a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock.
Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
In the U.S. Senate, not just because her driver was a spy for China, but that her husband, Richard Blum, has been working, has been closely tied with the Communist Party leaders in China for decades because of his business dealings. So, I mean, really, this is the person who really should have left office a long time ago. Dianne Feinstein at this point is absolutely ancient and just so entrenched in the swamp that it's a
Yeah, and I saw where even Ruth Bader Ginsburg was talking about how hyper-partisan the confirmation process is. And, we've really seen that. I mean, if you go back, a couple of decades, this used to be a very bipartisan process where you had people getting confirmed to 90, with 90 yes votes. And now the margins are so thin because there are clearly two.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. I was just fielding a phone call during the break there. Somebody remarking the bureaucracy that we have here is just out of control. The healthcare bureaucracy, I mean, somebody once compared putting, was it Sarah Palin, lipstick on a pig? I mean, I know that phrase was out there before she said it, but that seems to be, to me, what Arkansas Works is, or at least that's my skepticism. I mean, I know the liberals are kind of going crazy. If they took off 4,500 people who didn't work, who didn't do our part-time work suggestion program. That's really what it is. And it's the end of the world. Really, 4,000 people out of a program of 250,000+ people, and we want to act like that's. And here's the thing, and you talk about the bureaucracy. To put the lipstick on the pig, you got to have a whole new bureaucracy. I'm going to have some more news on that next week, I've been told, according to my sources, that there's going to be some more news next week, potentially. But in order to put the lipstick on the pig, that is Obamacare, Medicaid expansion, Arkansas Works, whatever they want to call it now, they now have to dump a whole bunch of money into a program that tracks whether or not people are working. And, do we even have the infrastructure to do that? Do we have the enough employees to do that? I would imagine it's pretty daunting if you're having to check in with the government once a month to tell them, that you have done this or that, or you qualify for this exemption or that exemption so you don't have to find a job this month. I would imagine that eventually, you got the same people working in the government constantly checking this. It would have to be. It's to me, it would just be it'd be a daunting task, to say the least. A daunting task. Oh yeah. Hey, speaking of the health insurance exchange, last week Conduit for Action posted that if you expose the liberal voting records, you're going to be called a terrorist, because Senator Jim Hendren referred to Conduit as Afghani terrorists. But there's a little piece here written about the healthcare exchange. Joe, can you show this? This piece here from last week did a little flashback, a little stroll down memory lane where it says this: remember when Jim Hendren filed a bill with a title saying that it was going to prohibit Arkansas from establishing a state-based Obamacare exchange? Stop. We just did a whole 20-minute segment on the state-based Obamacare exchange that we still have. Isn't that funny? Remember when Jim Hendren filed a bill with a title saying that it was going to prohibit Arkansas from establishing a state-based Obamacare exchange? He amended the bill so the body of the bill instead retained, not prohibited, the authority for the state-based Obamacare exchange. I think it should be a crime if you title a bill one thing and it can be proven to do the complete opposite of what the title says. That is intentionally misleading, a la John Woods. Oh, right. Yeah. That's starting to make sense. Unless the Supreme Court, blah, 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 blah. The authority for the exchange remains to this day because of Hendren's deception. And we were just telling you, now the state of Arkansas, because of Jim Hendren, now the state of this thing has been enabled, and the state of Arkansas is now going to charge 4.25% per plan as a premium tax, when if we didn't have an exchange, the federal government would only charge us 3%. It's just crazy, folks. Absolutely crazy. Coming up next on the program, I want to ask the question, can the legislature police itself? Is this something that is reasonable? Should we assume that these politicians can police themselves, given the fact that we have corruption in the headlines of our state officials almost on a weekly, or on a daily, if not weekly basis? What do you think? Here's another way to explore this. The fact that they're suggesting that they police themselves, in light of everything that's going on, does that in and of itself reveal how disconnected from reality they are? The fact that you would have politician after politician, right, that would be going down, be pleading guilty or being convicted and sentenced, and you've got this whole scandal that's continuing to unfold, right? It's been going on under our leadership's nose, but it's not, I mean, they've known about it because they've supported these candidates over limited government candidates, because it's apparent now that the Republican leadership in this state would rather have crooked Republicans like John Woods and Jake Files than they would limited government Republicans that would vote against big government. That is obvious now. The fact that you would then go out, try to lead the parade, and say, hey, don't worry, we'll change the rules, and now we'll be able to tattle on each other. When you could have tattled on each other the whole time. The fact that you would suggest that in the wake of everything that's going on, isn't that a little bit insulting? I'll address this more when we come back. But I think we should be insulted by the idea that they're now asking for more trust, that they're going to police and snitch on themselves. I don't know. It's kind of hard. You guys have been conspiring together to make money and carve out financial niches for yourselves. And now, I mean, what's changing? The fact that everybody knows about it now and you're embarrassed? I don't buy that either. We'll have more on this question. Can the legislature police itself when we come back? I mean, come on. If the legislature was solely in charge of policing itself, John Woods wouldn't be going to jail for 18 years. They supported him for re-election. Come on. You know I'm right. We got to take a break. Back in a moment.
Of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
You know, can you just imagine what the fake news media is going to do with this? I mean, they're going to run it live. They're going to replay it constantly. And what this is you can just see, this is an allergic reaction from the swamp, doing everything they can to make sure Donald Trump does not get another Supreme Court justice, does not get to pick another Supreme Court justice before the midterms.
And it's right out of the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill playbook. I mean, except that now we're talking about high school. You know, I mean, really. I mean, next time it will be middle school. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really where we're going with this. It's just going to keep getting dumber every time.
I guess towards the end of last week, when it was revealed that Dianne Feinstein, again, Senator Dianne Feinstein, who I want to remind everybody may in fact be a Chinese agent. I mean, she definitely had, she's ignorant. I didn't know I employed somebody for decades, that was my driver that was working for the Chinese government until the FBI told me. I swear I didn't know. But so Dianne Feinstein, she sits on this letter since June. And then the report that I read, Brian, said that the FBI, she referred it to the FBI. That was the headline, but the FBI says, we're not investigating this. Now that the accuser has come forward, I wonder if that might change.
Well, now, when you have this Jeff Flake kind of situation where you have a couple of Republicans, I mean, it does seem like it changes the dynamic. But you're absolutely right about Dianne Feinstein, one of the least trustworthy people in the U.S. Senate, not just because her driver was a spy for China, but that her husband, Richard Blum, has been working, has been closely tied with the Communist Party leaders in China for decades because of his business dealings. So, I mean, really, this is a person who really should have left office a long time ago. Dianne Feinstein at this point is absolutely ancient and just so entrenched in the swamp that it's a
Yeah, and I saw where even Ruth Bader Ginsburg was talking about how hyper-partisan the confirmation process is. And, we've really seen that. I mean, if you go back, a couple of decades, this used to be a very bipartisan process where you had people getting confirmed 90 with 90 yes votes. And now the margins are so thin because there are clearly two different philosophies on how to, interpret the Constitution of the United States, Brian.
Well, sure, one party wants to flush it down the toilet. That's their interpretation of the Constitution. Yeah, there are two different ways of looking at it. One side values it and the other doesn't. So that's the bottom line here. But we are living in ridiculous times, and news, the fake news media has become more absurd than ever. But I mean, at some point, this is going to come back to haunt them because they're going to have a Democratic president, and who's going to want to confirm somebody to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they've opened the door for a lot of shenanigans here. So,
well, I'm just, I don't know what to do in this situation. Like, I don't know. Do you go ahead and have the vote anyway? And what are they going to do if you did? I mean, you talk about meltdown mode. And again, the American people, I think, see through this for exactly what it is. And I think they think this is absurd and ridiculous.
Look, this is a numbers game. It's about counting to 51, and that's the bottom line. If Jeff Flake or somebody is not going to vote, Susan Collins especially, if they come out and say, I'm not voting for this, then the thing, that it's effectively dead because you don't have the votes. So, well, the other issue, though, are the Democratic senators from red states and how they're going to vote. But look, if they have Jeff Flake and other people providing cover for them, they'll go ahead and know as well. So if you don't have 51, then there's no point in proceeding with the vote. So Republicans the leadership doesn't have that much power over this. It all depends. But someone like Flake, we can't get rid of that guy fast enough.
Yeah. Okay, so if in fact this is now stalled and delayed, what does that mean about the midterm elections? I mean, that's got to be a motivator for those of us on the right to get out and vote.
Well, that's why our group, we have created a new super PAC called Red Wave America, and we're actually intervening in these races because we're so disgusted. Because our members, we have a group called Stop the Scalpings on Facebook. We have 111,000 members there, and they asked us to become more activists in nature. So we created
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It's hour number 2 this morning. Thank you so much for being with us. Hey, I want to tell you that tomorrow on the program, we got a great show for you tomorrow. We're going to be interviewing Megan Barth from the, let me see here. I'm sorry, I can't get my notes. Yeah, the Media Equality Project. Again, we'll be talking a little bit about just some of the outrageous things that leftists are saying these days. But then, you guys ever watch The New Revolution on Fox News? The New Revolution. It's on the weekends. Steve Hilton is going to be on this program tomorrow at 7:33, and we're excited to have him. He is the author of a new book, and we're going to discuss that book called Positive Populism, Revolutionary Ideas to Rebuild Economic Security, Family, and Community in America. And we're excited to have him on. So you want to be here tomorrow at 7:33 with Steve Hilton. He's going to be on. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. We're going to talk about his book. We're going to talk about the bureaucracies. We're going to talk about the deep state. We're going to talk about the line that's blurred between corporate America and government and what that means, and how populism for so long has been defined by the people who have a great disdain for populism. It's such an elitist mentality. And so I'm excited to get to talk to Fox News host Steve Hilton tomorrow. Again, 7:33. You want to certainly stay tuned for that. Okay. Where do we want to start here? Oh, yeah. Here's the question. Question of the day, really. And it's over at conduitforaction.org. Can the legislature police itself? Can the legislature police itself? So it's an obvious question. It's an obvious answer, rather. The obvious answer is no, they can't. I tease this a little bit. I think this whole concept is offensive in the wake of all these politicians going to jail. Conduit for Action commentary. In the wake of multiple scandals involving state legislators, Senator Jim Hendren proposed and passed revisions to the Arkansas State Code of Ethics. The Arkansas Senate's Code of Ethics, rather. So it's not law, it's Senate rules. The revisions mandate some additional reporting of conflicts, and that is good. But the Senate plan hinges on the Senate being able to police itself when one of its members acts in unethical ways. This means a senator must stand up and accuse another senator of unethical conduct, and other senators must rule on the actions of their colleagues. Can you imagine how ostracized that you would be if you did something like this? Because this, let me just tell you, what is described here, okay, the prescription on how to clean up corruption is to tattle on each other. You know who's been tattling on everybody? Brian King. What I mean by that is he's gotten down on the floor and he's called these people out for being inconsistent. He's called them out for being, for part of the Medicaid mafia. He's done it in media interviews. He's the one that's done this. And what do you guys do? What do you guys do? Well, you support a guy to run against him, right? The one guy that knows about all the corruption because he's seeing it and he's sounding the alarm, you make sure he doesn't come back to Little Rock. Don't you find that a little bit interesting? And now you guys want to police yourselves? Can you imagine? I mean, right now, a senator must stand up and accuse another senator of unethical conduct. Can you imagine? You won't get any bills passed if you do that. You won't get any bills passed. You'll be punished. It's a joke. If you think about how things work down there, it really is. Question is this: do you think the Senate and the House of Representatives are capable of policing themselves? Consider this: cobwebs and disciplinary proceedings. The Senate has a code of ethics, has had one for many years. They've had one for a while. And there have been no complaint hearings by senators. They must be a very ethical bunch, right? Meanwhile, in the court system, Senator John Woods, guilty. Jake Files, guilty. Hank Wilkins IV, guilty. Jeremy Hutchinson, under indictment. Paul Bookout, guilty. Solicitation of bribes? Yes. It was recently revealed in court that John Woods solicited a $10,000 bribe from Jim Hendren to not run for the same Senate seat if they had both been put in that same district under reapportionment. Hendren refused and mentioned the bribe to law enforcement, but when they said it would take him wearing a wire and getting a recorded statement to get a conviction, he dropped the matter. In addition, Jim Hendren never filed an ethics complaint, which would have had a less stringent burden of proof. Instead, the Hutchinson-Hendren family later supported John Woods for re-election to the state Senate. And by the way, this is now the same guy that is leading ethics reform. You'll have to excuse my skepticism. Number 3, Obamacare Medicaid expansion. Senator Alan Clark was interviewed by me. This was a while back. And Alan Clark at the time alleged intimidation, blackmail, and bribery in the passage of Arkansas's version of Obamacare Medicaid expansion. It writes here, did Clark file a complaint? No. In fact, in mentioning that, a colleague was threatened with loss of business if the colleague did not vote for the Obamacare program. Clark said, I would never name the name under oath. They would just have to put me in jail. I wouldn't name the name. So, interesting thing here. I mean, if it comes down to it, I mean, you at some point we're going to have to start naming names. If you're, and so this is again illustrating what's the answer? Can the legislature police itself? Okay. Now, I mean, I remember when Alan Clark came on the show and said this. I was very grateful for him to say this because this was at the time where you had. I was very grateful that he was honest because this was at the time where the conservatives in this state were this close from stopping the funding of Arkansas Works, Obamacare, and really torpedoing ASA and the insurance company's $2 billion windfall. Of course, that was then you did the line item veto, and that was unconstitutional to get around the 3/4 requirement that you have to spend money in this state. But that's for another time. Question number 4. Lobbyist attempted bribe. In 2013, Representative Richard Womack said in an interview, quote, a lobbyist asked me if I would consider changing my vote on the private option for $20,000 to $30,000 in my campaign account as soon as they could put it in there legally and 2 elections unopposed, end quote. Did Womack file a complaint with the Ethics Commission or law enforcement? No. Maybe you would have done things differently or maybe not. But this article is not about judging how legislators handle these specific things, okay? It's about whether the legislature can police itself. Is it possible? Because I got news for you. I know why Alan Clark wouldn't name the name or why Richard Womack didn't do anything aside from make the allegation. Because they would never get another thing done the rest of the time they were there. Nobody would have talked to them. That's the way it is. I mean, you know, it's like, okay, am I going to be able to, am I cool enough to sit at the cool kids table? No, but I don't want to get kicked out of school entirely. I don't want to not even be able to go in the lunchroom, you know? And that's what's at stake there. It is a corrupt environment. I'm not excusing it by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying it is so much worse than any than most people know. You assume that it can't possibly be as bad as D.C. And it's almost worse because less people know about it. And the less people that know about something, the more opportunities there are for massive corruption and insider knowledge and people getting away with all kinds of stuff they wouldn't get away with if the mainstream media in this state was actually doing their job. Do you think the new Senate panel, controlled by the President pro temp of the Senate, will be more rigorous in enforcing the Code of Ethics? Consider statements by committee member Senator Jason Rapert at the committee's organizational meeting, as reported by the Democrat Gazette. Quote, Senator Rapert, Republican Conway, said he worried the rules could lead to people who work for a living not being able to serve in the Senate. Rapert said he doesn't want anonymous complaints to bog down the committee. Rapert said the new rules defining a consultant as a person who provides expert or professional advice will be catching everybody in that. The point is, self-policing by the legislature will not work, and there is no reason for Senator Hendren to pretend it will. As a matter of fact, again, we should all be very offended that in the wake of all the corruption and the fact that Senator Hendren knew about John Woods, still supported him for re-election, and knew about all the rest of the stuff that's going on and didn't say anything and didn't file an ethics complaint, now he's going to tell you, oh, we'll police ourselves. It's an offensive notion. I mean, it is the media, I'm sure, just kind of laps it up, although there was some skepticism from the mainstream media in the press conference that they held right after Jeremy Hutchinson was implicated in the Milty Rusty Cranford plea deal of $500,000 being paid to Hutchinson as a bribe, allegedly. That there was some skepticism there, but to me, I just think, come on, guys. You've been there the whole time. You don't have credibility at this point. And especially Senator Hendren, when it's now revealed he was asked to bribe John Woods and said no and then didn't cooperate with the FBI about it. And now you want to tattle on your friends? No. That would be considered rude or mean or unbecoming, or you don't know how to, be congenial with one another. I mean, gosh, that's what they would say. To pretend otherwise is insulting in the wake of the corruption. It's just very insulting. And it really kind of, you hate to say this, but it just makes me think that they all think we're idiots. Like they really have disdain for us, and they think, well, you've never been down here in my shoes. You don't know the prestige of serving to the Marble Palace. You don't know how things work. I know how to get a bill passed. You don't know anything. Well, certainly know one thing. People are going to jail. Our public officials are going to jail. Dak Keese, I'm thankful for Dak Keese, the Western District prosecuting attorney, because of what he's doing behind this. I just want to encourage Cody Highland and Dak Keese to keep going, because the people still have a lot of a big lack, a big gap, a chasm, if you will, of confidence between us and our government that we don't have right now because the corruption's so bad. Meanwhile, the legislature weakened the ethics laws with the do-over rule. Remember this? So in the wake of all of this, thanks to John Woods, they can now just do over once they're caught. Ended the people's ability to amend the ethics law by initiated act, failed to pass Senator Brian King's bill to require disclosure of business relationships between legislators and Medicaid providers, and failed to pass Senator Linda Collins-Smith's bill to prohibit legislators who are lawyers or consultants from representing clients before the legislature. But they're going to police themselves. They were resistant to laws that would have exposed them. What makes you think they'll be any different? Talk about lipstick on a pig. The Senate changing their ethics rules and want to act like everything's fine. It's lipstick on a pig. Listen, I know there are other senators who are going to try to actually codify this, and I support you. I hope you go as far as you can. I'm talking to, senator-elects like Mark Johnson and others who, have been on this show saying, hey, we're working on ethics. We know this is a problem. And it needs to come from somebody who's new to the institution as well, in my opinion. Not some of you guys who've been there this whole time and it's been going on under your nose. And I'm going to say this this argument of, well, you're gonna make it so stringent that an attorney can't be a legislator. Well, you know what? At this point, let's go there. I mean, if it's that stringent, okay, let's be too strict. And if we need to back it off a little bit afterwards, that's fine with me. But I mean, there needs to be an all stop right now. Call it a cooling off period or whatever you want to. But I'm fine with that. This idea of, well, I should still be able to be an attorney, and but you're going to make it hard for me to do that. Well, maybe your profession shouldn't be taking large sums of money to pass bills for your clients then, right? Maybe there shouldn't be a loophole. Now, if you as an attorney want to open up your books, maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe if you want to practice law and you want to be a legislator, you have to open up your books. I mean, they just all need to be public. Your business needs to be public if you want to do this. Well, how else? I mean, I know you have attorney-client privilege, right? Well, I mean, you can claim that right now all day long. Attorney-client privilege, my contracts are my business. There's just got to be a way to keep you guys in check. And right now, there is no way, unless the federal government, does end up charging Jeremy Hutchinson with what Rusty Cranford has admitted that he did. So I don't know. We'll wait and see. Phone number is 870-275-9799. Can the legislature police itself? I think we've answered that question. It's a big fat no. No way they can. And some of their statements really give you an indication. I mean, it's not just like, well, I don't think they can. It's a very firm no. We got to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.
A group which you can look up our page on Facebook called Red Wave. Just type that in one word.
Yeah, you broke up there, Brian, a little bit. You broke up.
Oh, yeah.
Red Wave.
Sure. So we have our new group, Red Wave America, and you just use the @ symbol and look us up on Facebook. So we're intervening in some of these races because, look, the left is trying to take down Ted Cruz in Texas with one of the sleaziest candidates they've put forward in a long time, this guy, Beto O'Rourke, who pretends to be Hispanic but isn't, and who's Irish American but pretends to be Hispanic with a name that's just a nickname that, he made up. So I mean this is the kind of what we're facing in 2018. This is ridiculous.
Brian Maloney, I appreciate it. Editor-in-Chief, MediaEqualizer.com. Go there now for some great stories and great insight. Brian, it's always great to have you on and to have your analysis. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you so much.
All righty, have a great morning. Folks, we're going to...
Do you need conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get
Nephewed. Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of uncle, nephew, and nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided. last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you. Uncle, nephew, and nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions. Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back. It's now time for our Carefully Crafted Language segment of the week. Carefully Crafted Language, it's a phrase. It was invented by Governor Asa Hutchinson himself. Listen based on this comment.
I want to refer everybody back to my remarks because that's the key language that was carefully crafted.
For this week's Carefully Crafted Language segment, we're going to take a look at Mr. Mark Moore's article over at arneighbors.org. It's the Arkansas Neighbors Project. He laments that, there was a time when news agencies actually hired cynics as reporters. That doesn't seem to be the case. He dissects piece by piece Andrew DeMillo's recent article about Governor Asa Hutchinson. Listen to this. He starts by saying this, quotes this part of Andrew DeMillo's piece. But there are still obstacles that could complicate Hutchinson's re-election bid. A number of ex-legislators have been implicated in corruption cases, and an ex-senator was convicted in a kickback scheme involving state funds. While Hutchinson hasn't been a figure in any of those cases, there's always a risk of his suffering from broad attacks against state government in the upcoming campaign, end quote. Mark Moore writing, gee, Andrew, how do you write a paragraph like that without mentioning that the governor's nephew was one of the legislators implicated in corruption, prompting his indictment and resignation from the state Senate? Or for that matter, there was an earlier paragraph which pointed out that Hutchinson won an indirect victory when Bob Ballinger defeated Hutchinson critic Brian King in a Republican Senate primary. That paragraph understated the matter. Hutchinson and the establishment was all in on unseating King, who was asking too many hard questions about where the money went. Ballinger won the primary, but Hutchinson backed Ballinger is one of those who have been tied to corruption cases here and here, the Ecclesia thing, though so far without indictment. Heck, Hutchinson was helping disgraced convicted ex-Senator John Woods beat off a challenger in the Republican primary right up until Woods dropped out of the race as the net closed in around him. When he has taken sides in Republican primaries, meaning Asa, which is often, Hutchinson has consistently backed the most ethically troubled candidate. Wow, but the reporting is so carefully crafted that you're actually distancing yourself. Listen, DeMillo's paragraph was obviously written to distance Hutchinson from the corruption which blossomed all around him. That takes some very compliant acrobatics, especially in the same article, whose theme is how the GOP in Arkansas is Hutchinson's party now. It's his party, but somehow he has no responsibility for the corruption that is oozing from that party. Think about this. This is excellent writing here by Mark Moore, and it goes on at length to talk about how the media is really in the tank for, really protecting the status quo in and of itself. And again, that's a great point. The article was about how the Arkansas GOP is now Hutchinson's party now. It is his party. But you've got all these Republicans going to jail, and there's no skepticism that Hutchinson is in any way responsible for it. And that part about Brian King asking too many tough questions and getting taken out is certainly something that you would think the mainstream media would be, if it was reversed, right? And this was about, this was the Trump administration, involved in this. You definitely, there would be all kinds of tough questions being asked here. Rightfully so. We got to take a break. We're up against a hard break. When we come back, though, I want to introduce you to Mr. Rocky Romanella. Back in just a moment. being with us today. Again, starting the beginning of your week with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Please welcome back to the program. He's the co-founder of the Media Equality Project and editor-in-chief of MediaEqualizer.com. We've got Mr. Brian Maloney back with us. Brian, good morning to you, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So on Friday, I was prepping for our interview, Brian, and we were going to talk a little bit about, Dianne Feinstein and Brett Kavanaugh and, this letter that she's been sitting on since June and everything else. And I know we're still going to talk about that, but we've had some new developments because the accuser is now accusing the nominee for the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh, of sexual misconduct. What do you make of this?
Well, I do think that you hit the correct point first there, and that is, what was Dianne Feinstein doing sitting on this thing? So now we've got this situation where, we can't proceed with this until this has been investigated. Well, Feinstein has had this for months. And so now, conveniently, she drops this at the 11th hour when it can do the most political damage. And look, what Democrats are trying to do here is stall the vote until after the November election. That way they can win control of the U.S. Senate, win control of Congress, and then scuttle this whole thing, and then Trump will never get anyone he wants confirmed. So that's what all this is about, is trickery. So, am I going to be able to sit here and say that this didn't happen 35 years ago in high school or whatever? No. But, I mean, if you're able to look at this and not feel like it's become a theater of the absurd, I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's absolutely ridiculous what's going on.
Yeah, you are exactly right. I also think that there's probably some fundraising to some of this. I know a couple of weeks ago up at MediaEqualizer.com, back when Cory Booker was having his grandstanding Spartacus moment, they were sending out emails, fundraising, trying to, they want to run for president, some of these people.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question that all this has been an opportunity for, seeing which Democrat looks strongest going into 2020. So there's that. But I just think that Feinstein, I mean, she has no excuse, for sitting on something for 3 months and then dropping it when it's politically timed to this extent. So, but, I mean, the bottom line is that Kavanaugh has now had his reputation smeared. I don't know why anybody would ever want to be on the Supreme Court, run for president, run for office, do anything anymore, because it's all about trickery, and it's all about sliming people at the worst possible moment. And, I mean, think about it, we're actually now seriously talking about what Kavanaugh may or may not have done in high school. I mean, high school.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks for starting the beginning of your day with us here. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, and we're building a liberty machine. Hey, welcome to the program for the first time. I want you to meet Mr. Rocky Romanella. He is a business leadership expert, and he is the founder of 360 Management Services, LLC, former president of UPS. Rocky, welcome to the program this morning.
Well, thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be on with you and your audience.
Yes, sir. So, hey, first of all, tell us a little bit about 360 Management Services. The website is the number 3 and then spelled out 60managementservices.com. What are you hoping to accomplish with this?
Well, we have 3 legs of our stool here at 360. One is the keynote speaking, which I do and I thoroughly enjoy, and keeps me very busy and gives me the opportunity to meet some wonderful people. We have a leadership training portion, which is a lot of fun, and we talk about such important topics like why values matter, how to have those difficult conversations, succession planning, and those kinds of things, and basic supervisor leadership skills. And the third leg of our stool is a consulting piece of the business, and we really focus in on process improvement. How do you fix things, but then keep them fixed long term? And we really enjoy that. We enjoy working with small, medium-sized businesses. We feel like those are the types of companies that want us to get in and get out and make things happen quickly and effectively, and not park ourselves there for the next 6 months to a year. So we enjoy doing it. We enjoy helping small businesses, and it gives us an opportunity to maybe give back from all the things that we've learned over our careers. I've got over 40 years of business experience. Individuals in our team here at 360 all have over 25 to 30, 35 years of experience. So it's a lot of fun, and it gives me a chance to meet a lot of wonderful people.
I see that you have a book here entitled Tighten the Lug Nuts, The Principles of Balanced Leadership. And I know it's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other places. What can you tell us about that book?
Well, to me, the book was written as I sat there and thought about, my career and the wonderful people I met along the way and the influences that I had. I mean, I think sometimes people believe the influences and the mentoring that happens along the way has to be from significant individuals in terms of titles and positions. For me, a lot of my mentoring came from people who I've met along the way, worked with. My dad, who has since passed, but was such a wonderful influence in my life growing up, and my wife, who has been such a great partner, friend, mentor for me along the way in my adult life, and then the many people along the way. So for me, it was a chance to sort of give back. And I believe leadership, and we're all leaders at one time or another, it's about legacy. Do you leave things a little better than you found them? Are people better because of their time with you? Are your customers better because of their interaction with your business? And so for me, I thought if I could, kind of put that down on paper and write this kind of book that maybe at the end of the book somebody tilts their head and says, oh, okay, it's a different way of looking at it, or maybe it can help me. And if any of those kinds of things happen, I feel like I'm giving back, and it's a chance for me maybe to leave a little bit of a legacy.
So if you're, and again, we're talking with Mr. Rocky Romanella, a business leadership expert. So, with someone who's got a career as, extensive as yours and accomplished as yours, and you talk to business owners and you're in the business world, what's some of the bigger concerns that businesses have today when it comes to government intrusion or government interference or government compliance?
Well, if you think about it, we're the freest country in the world with the most rules and regulations. It's unbelievable. I mean, if you really think about it. I mean, instead of fixing things, people just want to regulate things. And so as a small business, what you want to do is run your business. I want you to help me, but I don't want you to get in the way. I mean, I've got a good idea. I want to make it work. One of the things I learned, and I worked for a very large organization like UPS, but during my time at UPS, we purchased mailboxes, et cetera, and we branded to the UPS store, which was a direct report for me. But what it gave me was the opportunity to work with just tremendous individuals who are entrepreneurs. And I think what happens is that the biggest thing the significant event for me was that you realize that nobody's more all in than a small business owner. I mean, a small business owner takes everything they own in life, slides it across the table, and says, I'm all in. A company, when you work for a company or you're in a leadership position and you've never been an entrepreneur, you think you understand P&L, profit and loss. But nobody understands P&L like a small business owner, because at a small business, you hit the cash register at night, the drawer opens, you pay your people, pay your vendors, and what's left is what you bring home to your family. That's not what politicians understand. They just think it all comes together and it happens because they've never done any of those things. And what they don't realize is they're not being helpful to small businesses when they put in all these regulations. They're just making it more difficult. And so today, I believe in the small businesses that I work with, just give me a chance. Give me an opportunity. I'm not asking you to give me anything. I'm asking you to not get in my way and give me a chance to be successful.
So what do you think about the business attitude, the environment now? I know I've seen the photos of President Trump with the stacks of regulations that he's gotten rid of. I know he wants to get rid of more. And there are reports out there about, optimism and everything else. So how are things now, in your opinion, versus the last administration or even before that?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is separate out style versus substance, right? So, you may not agree. I'm not saying you personally, but people may not agree with his style or his approach to thing or all the Twitters and everything. Put that on the side for a second. Let's talk about the results. The results are he's freed up small businesses. People are hiring people. Wages are going to go up because you're going to have the opportunity to potentially move to another business that's paying more money because everyone's got wanted signs out there. And so either companies are going to say, hey, look, we want to retain some of the top talent out there, so therefore we're going to have to improve our compensation packages or maybe enhance our compensation packages, or we're going to risk losing those individuals. Well, now, more people are going to go to other companies, supply and demand. So when there's a demand for more workers, which is a great thing that's happening right now, and he's kind of unleashed the entrepreneurial spirit inside the United States, as well as allowed businesses to grow and develop, the worker now becomes, the person with a little bit of authority and opportunity because they have choices now. And I think that's wonderful. I think he's done a great job with his policies. He's a business person, right? A business person has no choice. Whether you're a very small business, 1 or 2 person company, or a very large organization with 300,000 employees, you still have to take the long view and a strategic view of things. And by his nature, he has no choice but to do that because that's what he grew up in. So I think he's going to position us strategically for growth. Look, I don't always agree with his style on things, but you know what? That's his right to do it. He's won the election. I'm very happy with the policies that he's implemented, though.
Yeah, me too. And like you said, the results speak for themselves. They really do. Again, folks, we're talking with Mr. Rocky Romanella, a business leadership expert, author of the book Tighten the Lug Nuts, The Principles of Balanced Leadership. And the website is the number 3, spelled out 60managementservices.com. I'm curious, we talked a little bit about small business, okay? And we can also talk about big business. I may not be a fan of, let's say, Amazon's Jeff Bezos and his politics, and, he owns the Washington Post. But, man, you have this socialist Bernie Sanders. I saw on the Hill last week. He's put out a bill that would make Amazon and other big companies have to pay extra into welfare programs. And the argument is, Rocky, that it's because they're not paying their workers a living wage. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think Paul, if you think about it, it really comes down to, let's chase the next shiny object. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. And so, Bernie can't, Bernie and his policies and the extreme left, you can't, there's no argument any longer. Yeah, there are more people working. There is optimism out there in the business world. So you can't criticize Trump for those things. So let's discuss other things, right? Let's discuss, Amazon. And does Amazon pay a living wage? You know what? If Amazon doesn't continue to improve its wages, well, I'm not saying it has a poor wage process. I mean, there's people waiting online to work at Amazon. Remember, when an Amazon warehouse shows up in your neighborhood, the line's out the door for people to work there. So I'm not. How many people sit around the kitchen table and say, I'm thinking when Amazon's going to open, I think I want to go work there because they're never going to pay us enough. It's going to be a terrible place to work. It doesn't work that way. But what happens is Bernie he's struggling with. He can't criticize Trump for anything other than tweeting and his personality or style. And so now let's go talk about this. Let's kind of shift the narrative. So, look, you know what? I would bet, I've never met you before, but I would bet you and I are similar in that. Look, we can disagree without being disagreeable. Hey, look, we're open-minded. We want the country to be better. We want people to be better. So tell me what you got, Bernie. Give me an example of the things that you want to do. I'm listening. Intuitively, I'm thinking I'm probably not going to go there. But if you can give me a good reason, a good argument, give me some credibility in what you're saying, I'm at least going to give you the courtesy as a human being, as a person, as an American, to listen. But everything he talks about, free tuition. All right, you want to have free tuition. I've had 4 kids go through college. Talk to me. I'd be okay with paying less on tuition. Then you go look and you find out that Vermont has the second highest state tuition in the country. Well, if you did something and show me, hey, look, in Vermont, everybody's going to school for free and they're getting a great education, you might win me over a little bit. But there's no credibility in what they do or say because there's no substantive action. I think that's where they lose everybody. And frankly, it makes sense, right? Because show me a place where socialism works. Show me a place where we're giving away everything for free.
Yeah, and a lot of what he's saying in this specific case, I think it kind of builds on the left's narrative that, hey, if we could increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour, it would make everybody more prosperous. And on that, I'd love for you to address that because here in the state of Arkansas, coming up this November, we have the option on issue number 4 to raise the minimum wage over the next 3 years to $11 an hour. And I think like the state of Washington is $11.50. So it's got a lot of small businesses very concerned here. What are your thoughts on the minimum wage? Does it really help low income people the way it claims to?
No, because what happens is that then organizations find ways. Okay, you forced me to pay $15 an hour as a small business, and yesterday I was going to hire 2 people at $10 an hour. But now, and pay $20 for the hour for the 2 people working. But now today you're telling me it's $15 an hour. I'm just going to hire 1 person and find better ways through technology and do other things, or maybe put a full-time person and a part-time person on. At the end of the day, it's a math problem, right? I bring in this much revenue divided by, this much expense, and that's what I have left over. And so let the free market do that. Let the free market will do that, because as we start to compete for individuals to come work in our companies, the only way we're going to do that is for us to provide a better wage, better benefit package, and entice people to come to work for our small business, because we have the best small businesses. We treat people with dignity and respect. We let the free market do those things. Whenever you start to believe that you can mandate things, it doesn't work that way. It's just not. And what happens is the strength becomes the weakness. The strength of a small business owner is their creativity, their ingenuity, their desire to be successful. Well, okay, if you handicap me by telling me this is how much I'm going to have to pay, okay, I understand I have to follow the rules and regulations, but I'll find ways to still equal the fact that how much revenue I bring in, I'm going to spend less than the revenue I bring in. And the reason why they don't understand it as politicians is because they never run anything. They can't run water downhill, these people.
Rocky Romanella, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been great to meet you, and I want to tell everybody once again, the book is Tighten the Lug Nuts, The Principles of Balanced Leadership. You can get it on Amazon. You can also go to the y'all's website there, 360managementservices.com. Rocky, thanks so much for spending time with us this morning.
Well, Paul, it was a pleasure meeting you and speaking with the audience, and I hope some of the conversation we had was helpful to them and had shed some light on some of the issues that are going on. But I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Me too. I'd love to do it again sometime. Folks, we're going to take a break. The phone number, by the way, 870-275-9799. Sound off, call, text. Also, the Facebook comments, facebook.com/Conduit News, or the YouTube channel, Conduit News. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
So, I mean, if you can look at this and not shake your head in disbelief, I think we're in a very, very sad state of affairs.
No, there's no doubt that we are. So this is a delay tactic. I agree with you. That does sound right. They're trying to delay this because they know if they can torpedo his nomination, it's going to be a while before Donald Trump gets another one. It will be after the election, but before there's another nomination. What are your thoughts on this, Brian Maloney, in terms of, the vote, I believe, is scheduled for Thursday. You have one Republican, Jeff Flake, saying we don't need to vote. We need to delay it. What do you think? Or do you think they'll go ahead and stand firm? The White House, as of last night, was standing firm by Kavanaugh's denials, and they were going to move forward. What's Chuck Grassley going to do? What are you hearing?
Well, I think, notice how it is one of the most liberal Republicans in the U.S. Senate, Jeff Flake, one who's on.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, so kind of going back over the national news this morning. We start the program with national news, and then sometimes I like to kind of recap what we did at the very, very, very beginning of the show. The news of the day, in my opinion, is the fact that President Donald Trump is wanting to declassify a whole bunch of stuff that's going to expose the deep state, or at least that is the speculation out there. Here's a statement from the White House. At the request of a number of committees of Congress and for reasons of transparency, the President has directed the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and the Department of Justice, including the FBI. Now, in the statement, I think that's done like at least twice. The Department of Justice, including the FBI. It is very specific, saying we're talking about the FBI. You're not going to be able to say, well, we didn't know it was about us. The Director of National Intelligence and the Department of Justice, including the FBI, to provide for the immediate declassification of the following materials. 1. Pages 10 through 12 and 17 through 34 of the June 2017 application to the FISA court in the matter of Carter W. Page. Number 2, all FBI reports of interviews with Bruce G. Orr prepared in connection with the Russia investigation. And 3, all FBI reports of interviews prepared in connection with all Carter Page FISA applications. So we're going to get to see part of the FISA document and some of the FISA documents and some of the FISA application. And here's the kicker. In addition, President Donald J. Trump has directed the Department of Justice, including the FBI, to publicly release all text messages relating to the Russia investigation without redaction of James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and Bruce Orr, meaning do not redact their texts, their names. We want to see what they had to say. Folks, I don't know if the mainstream media will report it, because I have a feeling that if they report it, if they report what I think might be in some of these documents, they're going to be admitting to their audience that they've been lying to them for almost 2 years. About and it's all about emotion. It's all about sensational. Instead of admitting that, hey, Hillary Clinton might have been, number one, the worst presidential candidate ever to run in the history of the country. Number two, the left's message of pronoun usage was rejected in favor of Donald Trump saying, hey, we need to be a country again that actually has borders and laws. We need to enforce that and everything else. Instead of just realizing, hey, that was really the debate. That's kind of what everybody was deciding on, and they went with Donald Trump for obvious reasons. They want to say that it's us. What's so funny is, if you really look at it in those terms that I painted, and they say that flyover countries, the unreasonable ones, that it's the red states who are unreasonable, when you have one side that's constantly trying to divide people up into groups and pit them against one another based on, you didn't use the right pronoun, right? You didn't use the right pronoun. You think bathrooms should only allow one sex. You know? You don't, you know, it's like you don't think that the gay population makes up 25% of the country. It's you know, to then say that, well, then the other candidate was talking about things like, you know, illegal immigration, tax cuts, the fact that our middle class is shrinking, and at least he was attempting to say, you know, he has, you know, I want to save the middle class because I want to make sure that, you know, we fight you know, this, you know, tariff war. Our jobs are going overseas. The United States for decades has supported policies that are bad for the American worker. I mean, that's what he was talking about. Why do you think he won Pennsylvania? Right? Why do you think he won Pennsylvania and you know, in Wisconsin and Michigan? Why do you think he won those states? And so your message was rejected, and immediately now we're finding out that they were so terrified of the anti-status quo Donald Trump and so hurt that the pro-status quo Hillary Clinton was not going to be their president that they did unmasking. They funneled a phony dossier that had not been verified into the FBI and used it as a justification to get a FISA warrant. The research was done and paid for by the Democrat Party. It's incredible. Here's the Fox News article. Trump orders feds to declassify key FISA documents, text messages, and FBI probe. The big news to me, though, is that say, do not redact James Comey's name. Do not redact his name. Do not redact the other's name. Last week, I sat down with Congressman Devin Nunes. We're going to listen just a brief part of that when I asked him about the FISA. Listen.
Things. And that was totally wrong. And then we think the American people deserve to see the rest of what they used and the tools and techniques that were used to target the Trump campaign and Trump campaign associates. And that's what we're asking the president to declassify.
Yeah, and so talk a little bit about that. Is the declassification that's been reported, is that going to happen this week, you think?
Well, we hear that they're working on it. We hear that they're trying to get the approval process done. I mean, the president has the power just to do it. We're hopeful. We wanted it done last week. There's rumors that it may be this week. We'll see, because you know we do have the hurricane that's coming to the East Coast. So,
do you think or believe the American people will ever see the full FISA documents and applications for themselves? Will those ever be declassified?
I do. I believe that they will.
Wow.
I do. Ultimately, I believe they will.
That was a big deal when Devin Nunes, to me, when he said that, because last week we weren't really talking about FISA documents, I don't believe. We were just talking about Bruce Orr's text messages or Bruce Orr interviews. And now President Trump has gone a step further. It's not just Bruce Orr. He's saying release Comey, release Strzok, release Page, release Orr. Oh, by the way, part of the FISA application with Carter Page, basically it's a lot larger declassification, a larger sum of documents than was originally reported this time last week. So anyway, that interview with Congressman Devin Nunes is up at conduitnews.com. That's conduitnews.com. Also, we talked about this other story about how the deep state, not just in justice, not just in FBI, but how the deep state and everywhere else loves to leak stories to the press that have no sources, you know, in order to then use those stories to get either politicians involved in an official capacity or law enforcement. That story we covered the first hour. It was a Breitbart article, The Deep State Exposed. Investigation uncovers Foggy Bottom Anti-Trump Leak Factory. It has to do with the State Department not liking one Trump employee or one employee that Trump appointed and what they did when she went out of town. And it's obvious that these guys are using the media. The government is now using the media with fake stories to try to shape public opinion. And the op-ed, by the way, that anonymous op-ed, doesn't that confirm the existence of a deep state? Anyway. Hey, tomorrow on the program, we'll be interviewing at 7:33 Fox News host of The New Revolution, Steve Hilton. He's got a new book out, I'll tell you about it tomorrow, 7:33 here on Conduit News, Arkansas. Be safe.